Good afternoon.
Facilitative, effectively.
I think we're waiting for a few more folks to join us from the waiting room. If you are joining us on Zoom today, welcome to this Tools for the Creative Life workshop series. It is the month of March, and we do these workshops every month. It is a partnership between some wonderful organizations, and we will give each of those organizations a chance to introduce themselves, but just make sure you know you are in the right place. Today is the March Tools for the Creative Life workshop. And we're talking about sort of ageism in arts, hearing from some of our art elders in our arts community of what they've seen and what they're experiencing still today as leaders in our community. Before we dive into that, I'd love to take a quick moment and do a brief land acknowledgement. So before we kick things off, I would like to acknowledge the land that we all
lips go. People talking.
If someone, thank you if you want to mute yourself, thank you. To acknowledge the land we live, work, and create on is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We intentionally recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up Colorado. We honor our elders, past, present, and future, and all of those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. We also recognize that much of our nation was built by the hands and on the backs of enslaved Africans and Indigenous peoples. We stand in awe of their resilience and creativity, and we express gratitude for and celebrate their past and ongoing contributions. We strive to never take for granted the privilege and complexity of living, working, and creating on this land, and intentionally honor Black, Indigenous, and communities of color in our city and our state. We commit to cultural equity and strive to make this a safe and welcoming space where healing can occur, truths can be told, hidden stories unearthed, and legacies of oppression and inequity continuously dismantled. In addition, we are dedicated to presenting this event, this workshop today, in an inclusive fashion. So if you are able, we invite you to update your name on your Zoom. You can click and rename yourself and include your pronouns if you desire. Again, it's helping to sort of normalize that practice. Thank you all for that. I realize I didn't introduce myself. I'm Meredith Badler. I'm the Deputy Director of the CBCA, the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts. We are one of several organizations that partners to put on this Tools for the Creative Life workshop series. I'll throw some links in the chat about us at CBCA. Our mission is all about advancing the creative economy through that intersection of arts and business, and we are honored to be part of this partnership. I'm going to toss it to, I believe, either John or Leah from Transforming Creatives to introduce their organization.
Hello, everyone. I'm John, as Meredith said, Executive Director of Transforming Creatives. We invest in the health of creatives so they can invest in the health of society. And part of our work includes operating a workspace in the RiNo Art District called Converge Denver that is home to filmmakers, photographers, writers, visual artists, designers, nonprofits, and other super creative humans. We also provide micro grants to artists through our Artists of Color Fund, moving resources into communities of color, one artist at a time. And we recently launched a new program called Creative Assembly. And Creative Assembly brings artists together for shared learning, for mutual support, and for experiences in community. And our next gathering is next week, the 23rd at 5:30, actually in person this time at Converge. And we're going to be joined by artists and collaborators from Interplay Art and Opera, which is an interdisciplinary performance and gallery project that kind of bridges the gap between contemporary visual art and live opera. And so we will discuss the artistic process and collaboration and kind of how music and art can inform each other. And we will drop a link into the chat for that, so you can join us potentially. And I think I'm throwing this to Allie, unless Teague is here, but I don't see them.
Yeah, hi, I'm Allie Sharp. I am with the RiNo Art District in Denver, and we are thrilled to be a partner on this series. We have a great panel lined up for you today. So I think without further ado, I will hand it over to our moderators today. We have Ari Shapiro here. Ari is the founder of Silver Cat Design, Art Consultation and Interior Decor in Denver, which specializes in art placement for senior living and hospitality environments. And we also have joining us today, Alexandrea or Alex Pangburn. She is the director of curation for the RiNo Art District. She is also the founder of Babe Walls and an established artist here in the Denver area. She runs the RiNo Mural program and also helps facilitate, organize, and manage artistic opportunities within the district and Denver as a whole. So with that, I will hand it all over to you to get us started.
Hi, really great to see you all, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really honored to have 4 really talented artists that have been in the Denver community for a long time, and I'm really excited to talk to each and every one of them along with Ari. We've kind of put some questions together for them to talk about just age in the arts and how that affects the work and evolution of an artist's medium. So we want to introduce Arlette Lucero. We have Saito, and then we have Sharon Brown and Emanuel Martinez. So thank you all so much for joining today. And yeah, I guess I just kind of wanted to start off with allowing those artists to have a chance to kind of introduce themselves and the mediums that they work in and how long they have been a part of the Denver community. So I don't know if somebody wants to start off or if you want me to call on you.
Let's see.
Arlette, you want to go?
Oh, you unmuted me. Okay, so my name is Arlette Lucero, and I have been in the art scene, geez, I'd like to say 40 years, but maybe it's been, yeah, about that long. And I work with, I paint and I do illustration, and I do some other things that are art related. Like right now, I was a teacher artist, but I'm also the educator at chalkgallery.org. So I put together classes, but yeah, so the medium I like to paint with mostly is acrylic. It used to be oil, and watercolor for my illustrations.
Great. Just go down the line. Sharon, you want to go next?
Well, I'm Sharon Brown, and my midlife crisis was to turn to art full time. And so for the last 35 years, I've been an artist here. And for 30 years, my husband Rex and I rehabbed an old factory that was an old industrial pattern shop and turned it into the pattern shop studio, where for the last 30 years, we've had shows of various artists, many shows, and I'm pretty prolific. In the last 35 years, I inspired by this talk, I counted up how many paintings I've made, and it's 836.
E.
And, this is part of the problem with being old. You got a lot of work. We were one of the founding families of RiNo with Tracy and Jill, and we have been thrilled to be here. Great.
Emanuel, you want to go next? Oh, might be on mute, maybe. Can't hear you.
Did someone call him?
Let's see.
I can go.
Okay, Yoshi, you want to go? We'll figure it
Okay.
out with Emanuel.
I'm Yoshi Saito. I'm a contemporary bronze sculptor, having a small private studio foundry in RiNo. And my approach is that of a obsessive craftsman, perhaps because I have a period of doing serious crafting glass blowing before. So I have to do everything from the beginning to the end with my hands in order to realize my work. And you may think that doesn't sound unique, but it is in bronze because most of the artists use commercial foundry to create bronze pieces. While I'm doing it by myself. And I also have used bronze as an art conceptual means. I will explain to you how so later in this talk.
Thank you. I have Emanuel on speaker on my phone. So Emanuel, I don't know if you want to try and talk and see if we can hear you through my end.
Okay, could you hear me?
Yeah.
You can?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I'm Emanuel Martinez. I'm a Denver native, and I've been doing artwork since I was 13 when I did my first mural in Golden, Colorado at a facility there for incarcerated kids. And I considered the pioneer of the mural movement here in Colorado. Having done first public murals in 1968, which is, I don't know how many years that is ago, but it's over 50 anyway. But, and I've done at least 100 murals now throughout in about 17 states and in 3 other countries. And I'm also a sculptor. I've done numerous public works of art all throughout the United States and several states, including here in Colorado. I got at least I got 4 pieces at State Capitol and other pieces in other parks. And I'm also a painter. I paint easel paintings and have shown a lot in major exhibits over the years. And I reside in Morrison now. Been here about 44 years, and but I'm still pretty active in the art the community, I guess, in Colorado. So that's my past.
Cool. Great. Okay. Thank you all for sharing that. And so our first topic that we want to talk about is kind of like each of your all's journeys into becoming a full-time artist, and what that was like when you started versus what that is to you now at this point.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was wanting to be an artist for a long time, and so I almost didn't take that in college. My mother wanted me to take something else, take Spanish, take business, and I said, well, I'm going to take some art classes, and they kind of talked me into going full blast into that. And so when I got out of college, I was pretty determined to become an artist. And when I met my husband, Lucero, he was a full-time artist, and it was me, him, and maybe 3 other artists. We had a studio together, and we called it Meta Studio. But through Meta Studio, we also, Actually, this kind of happened a little bit before. They had an organization called Chalk Gallery, Chicano Humanities and Arts Council. And so Meta Studio, Chalk Gallery, that was kind of the start of becoming a full-time artist for me. And that was pretty much a blast. And really, really, really enjoyed doing that. You know, all of us painting in one place and then showing our art together. And I also went into commercial art at that time. So I took some classes in, but that didn't stick as much with me, although I do know Photoshop, Illustrator, and all of that. So that came in handy later. And then later I went into illustrating books and so on and so forth. So that's how I started.
Well, I think I told you that I sort of came full-time to art after sort of a midlife crisis. In fact, after my husband and I saw Rocky, and I said, oh, wow, wouldn't it be great to do something I actually love to do?
Like the Sylvester
Instead
Stallone
of
movie?
being in sociology, the thankless profession of social services, you know, where, you know, one of those hopeless human condition kind of professions. And when I decided to take a canvas and slap some paint on there, I played with it, worked from an old photograph of my two sisters-in-law, and I had a acrylic underpainting and oil wash on top. And as soon as I finished it, I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And luckily, that is kind of how it turned out. Fortunately, I had a very supportive husband who supported my life and my work. And therefore, this entire enterprise of the Pattern Shop Studio really was a leap, especially 30 years ago. I'll tell you more about that later. But yeah, it was an easy decision because it felt like I was coming home to my childhood, which was spent drawing, working out all my issues by drawing situations, etc. Always about people also. So I've always been a figurative artist. People have always been at the center of my interest because my father and brother and grandfather were all psychiatrists. And so the psychological and the interactions between people always was a real focus for me.
Great. Yoshi?
Well, I finished my graduate degree in 1987 and started showing my work in San Francisco right away. So I've been a professional artist for 35 years. When I came to Denver 16 years ago, means nearly half of my career is spent here in Colorado. And I see many excellent pieces were produced here. That's resulted from me becoming a full-time artist for the first time in my life. Before I came here, I had a full-time job such as teaching. That obviously brought some constant disruptions in my art making activity. So that's my story here.
Emanuel?
Like I said earlier, I did my first mural, and that's really where I started doing artwork when I was juvenile delinquent, serving time at the facility in Golden, Colorado. That's where I recognized my talent as an artist, and I was helped by an artist from Santa Fe by the name of Bill Longley, who was my mentor and who kind of was implementing an arts program for high-risk youth, and I became his apprentice and stayed with him for 2 years. He was a painter, sculptor, and a muralist, and he pretty much taught me quite a bit and got me back into the public school system in Denver. And from there on, I just got involved in the civil rights movement in 1966. As an incorporator of the Crusade for Justice with Courtney Gonzalez. And that same year I worked with Cesar Chavez. And I also worked with the Martin Luther King's organization in 1968. So I was an activist, and I still am. I consider myself when it comes to civil rights and justice. So my artwork pretty much related. For 7 years, I did just artwork for the Chicano movement and some for the Black movement. And then following that, I just I started painting murals in the Denver area, like I said, in '68, and in 1971, I did was a pretty prolific year in Denver for my murals. I did them in several parks in Denver, including Curtis Park and Mestizo Park. We helped out at La Raza Park. I did one in the Alma Park, Argo Park, Robert F. Kennedy Center. So I painted quite a few murals on that year in the early 70s. And so that, and later on, I got into sculpture in the late 70s. And I taught at the Art Students League of Denver for 12 years, teaching figurative sculpture and drawing. And I'm self-taught. I don't have any formal education, or I was an apprentice to Bill Longley for 2 years when I was a kid, and I also had workshops with Francisco Zuniga of Mexico, who was the most prominent sculptor in Latin America for a while. And I also worked with David Alfaro Siqueiros, who was the most significant muralist in the world. When I was 19 years old, I went to Mexico and worked with him on a mural, which is the largest mural in the world in Mexico City. So I have my background has essentially been with just working with as an apprentice or workshops with other artists. So I don't have any formal education in it, but I've managed to do artwork since then. I haven't had a real job since 1971 when I was working for Parks and Recreation as a full-time muralist. At first I was at Lalma Recreation Center as first director, and then I became a full-time muralist for the city of Denver, probably the last muralist for the city of Denver. I don't think I know of anyone who ever worked full-time for them. But I was also fired by them because I didn't want to, they wanted me to paint over another artist painting a mural, Roberto Lucero mural, who I helped get together and got him the materials at La Raza Park, and I refused to do it, so I got fired. So then I moved on to New Mexico and lived there for a few years. But so I essentially just do mainly public works of art, and I show in museums. I have a permanent collection of works in the Smithsonian, Washington, D.C., and I'm going to show now at the Denver Art Museum and the Boulder Museum and the museum in Fort Worth, Texas. I forgot the name. It's an exhibition on the revolution, the graphic arts of the Chicano movement. So I managed to stay involved. I was one of the founders of the Museo de las Americas. My brother-in-law and I started that, which was essentially the first art venue that was on Santa Fe, an art district. That was 30 years ago. And I've stayed an arts advocate ever since. Been in numerous organizations, including Chuck, like Arlette, known Arlette and her husband, Stefan, for many years, and we've been just art advocates ever since. I think Arlette is, has been a very good arts advocate, and I respect her for that. But anyway, as far as the RiNo District is concerned, we could get into that later, I guess. But I've never been involved with the RiNo Art District. I've never been invited to do anything there, even though I was the first muralist in the RiNo District to do a mural at Curtis Park in 1971, which is still there, by the way. And we also have an arts organization to preserve Chicano murals, which are being destroyed by gentrification, and just other things. But I don't want to get into all that right now. But unless you want to talk about that.
That might be an opportunity to talk about that, throughout our conversation. It's really interesting to talk to all four of you because you have such different medium backgrounds, and I'm sure that, doing that medium throughout the time that you all have been artists has evolved and changed drastically. So I guess I kind of wanted to start with Yoshi. You do a lot of bronze work, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about the evolution of, when you first started doing bronze work versus, now. What is that biggest evolution that you see in your work?
Well, it's a long story actually, but let me see. I was in the Bay Area for schooling, but let me start from this much earlier thing. I was born in Tokyo, Japan. And my father was a professor in theology, and so he had this demeanor of thinking all the time, and naturally it made him really kind of serious, right? And plus he had this trauma from World War II, and he had to live with, such as like he lost his brother and. After a Russian soldier took him away from somewhere he was, in China or something, and never came back. And so that was a trauma for my father. And also he didn't like the way Japanese society all of a sudden started to change the application. And so he had all these mega issues always with him, and always kind of serious. But as a kid observing my father, I noticed that the moment he became very happy, and that was his gardening. And when he does work in the garden or raising, vegetable in a small vegetable pot, something, he looked very happy. And then seeing that, I kind of figured, okay, I'm going to do something with my hands, and that to produce something, and that probably bring me happiness. And that instinct was right one that I'm proving it. And but there's a long way to, many things happened in between then and now. And but I was during the period I was in the graduate school, I was in the Bay Area, and it was early to mid 80s. And the world was still in analog period. I don't know if you remember, or maybe you don't even remember. But maybe you're not born yet. But the Bay Area has Silicon Valley, mysterious place that I looked for. I tried to identify where the Silicon Valley is with this paper map, and it didn't tell me where. But so I ended up with it. I figured it was a nickname for this computer research and development place, and they use silicon, that's why it's Silicon Valley. Anyway, there was a lot of sort of fancy speculative talk about upcoming digital age, and it sounded really good. You know, it's like they was talking about once we have this can be possible, this and this and this, and without we having any gadget, no personal computers yet, no internet, no way. So there was always kind of fancy talk. And I was young, you know, I'm in my 20s, and so I was paying attention to those, something new, because that's nature of young people, right? And because you want to be relevant to the, you know, in the social cultural context. Anyway, so I was fascinated. At the same time, I had this kind of sense of doubt and also fear, even fear about this upcoming something. And because I was studying sculpture. Sculpture is something that, you know, it's tactile analog, and you make and you also you make things with your hands and body, but also you experience sculpture with your body, and it's really, you know, that's very nature of sculpture thing. So I was just like, man, maybe what I'm doing, what I'm learning, I'm trying to do would become irrelevant in the future, upcoming ages. So I had a sense of fear. And in that kind of psychological context, I started to think about what to do. So I was brainstorming all the time, and came to a conclusion that I'm going to use this ancient technology, and it totally is kind of drastic, but totally going against this, you know, that high-tech new technology movement. And okay, I'm going to use this bronze, which was discovered and developed in 5,500 years ago, as the highest technology that human history was able to bring to. And with certain sort of instinctive guess, probably not many very talented upcoming avant-garde artists would going to use it. And so I have less competition. in the obvious, you know, reality that there's so many competitions, you know, with colleagues and with upcoming artists, and so that's how I started to use bronze, believe it or not. And but I kept this in myself, because people around me started to tell me, don't do it. Just don't use bronze, because you're going to be seen as backward and irrelevant in the contemporary art discourse. So they warned me, just Yoshi, just stay away, don't do it. But as I said, I have some kind of instinct, and I waited until I became a little more confident with what I exhibit in public. So that's how I personally sort of developed my course of art in sculpture.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Ari, you wanna shoot the next questions out?
Sure. Yeah, and that is an awesome segue and such an interesting perspective, saying like you were almost doing it in reverse, that bronze was an ancient, you know, technology, but it was cutting edge at the time. And so I think that's really interesting. It's a great segue into our next inquiry for all of you or anybody. We would love to hear a little bit about how you may or may not, you know, utilize modern technology in the place of either creating your art or the process. Is there a dichotomy between, you know, how college art students today would do it using iPads or 3D printing, or like using technology to plan, create their art, versus sort of like a traditionalist aspect, you know, pencil and paper? And we have a couple painters on the panel. I went to art school for painting personally, and a huge discussion at the time is digital painting painting? Is it the process of painting? Is it, you know, to be a painter, does that mean you have to use physical oil paints and brushes? Or, you know, I think it was a huge hot topic at the time. So yeah, anything about how, you know, if you are all traditionalists or if you choose to use modern technology in your process, I would love to hear a little bit about that.
I'm totally a traditionalist. Maybe I'm just too old. I don't know. My husband fusses around with digital, and I sort of I kind of disregard it, like it's sort of cheating or something. I don't know how to describe it. It's just that I don't think I have the intellectual and technological wherewithal to venture into these avenues that I think are very current and relevant and hot and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know how much I could contribute to that conversation, just because I'm happily stuck in being an oil painter and a watercolorist. You know, I'm just stuck doing those things with brushes.
I would like to say something about that. As an illustrator, I've been doing a lot of tummy tell books, and with that, it's different authors, and they're telling their story, and it involves food sometimes because it's also a recipe book. So as I'm reading these stories, there's a lot of things that I don't understand what they are. And then I'm trying to picture, you know, how I'm going to illustrate the story. So I do use the computer a lot to look up items. Let's say it's a Jewish story and they're using all of these words and descriptions of it. And I don't know what the food looks like. I don't know, you know, how the person would dress, you know, or let's say it's Scandinavian and they're referring to something. So I do download a lot of images per each illustration so that I can illustrate the story the way that I'm kind of picturing it in my head, but with more detail. Now, as for doing my work digitally, I have tried that. I have tried to do that, and I did do that for a little bit, but it is so much easier to do a painting. You know, you get a photograph of somebody and you can use that photograph, or you can yeah, so it's easier for me not to do a painting digitally, but to just actually work with the medium than to try to do it that way. And I've seen beautiful, beautiful art that's been done digitally. And I say, go for it. Do it any way you can. My son does that. He works in digital art. Beautiful stuff. So, yep. I go traditional.
I'm like Mrs. Brown here. I'm a very old school traditionalist, I guess you might say, because I'm still a little ignorant, I think, when it comes to computers. I know the basics, and you know, in this business, you have to. You know, you just have to get involved with that, and I have been to a very limited degree. You know, I've never studied or taken a class in computer technology, or especially in the arts. You know, I respect and appreciate some of the new technology that I've learned about. Like, you know, I've done a lot of sculpture also, and you know, they have ways of blowing up, scaling up sculpture now that when I started doing it in around 1980, the first largest piece I did, you know, I had to, back in the day, just basically use the old grid system, which I still use in my murals and all that. So I don't I have nothing against the technology, and I like Arlette. I've seen a lot of great, digital images, and it does require skill. At first, I thought it was kind of like cheating, but I come to realize that that it does take some, because I watched my grandson do it, and he's really good at it, and I gave it a try, and then I just can't do it. It's one of those things like a video game or something. I'm no good at all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it, but I'm too old to pursue any new type of methods and the new technology. So I'll stick to the old, brush and paint and clay. But like I said, I do respect some of the artists that the work that I have seen. But I have no interest in pursuing anything like that.
Thank you. I think that's so cool that you still do murals from a grid system. You must be the only one really with not using projectors. I think that's really commendable. And just hard. They tried to teach us grid system in school and it's like a headache for me, but I'm not very mathematical, so.
Well, I have used a projector when I did my murals because it makes it so much easier and so much faster.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting conversation.
Most of my murals a lot of them are exterior, pretty large murals. My largest mural is 10,000 square feet downtown Denver, and you can't use a projector. No way. And most of those exterior murals, I could see if you're making a larger painting inside, where you could have some kind of projector, but in my case, the grid system is, I think, the only way to do them. I mean, I can't think of a better, easier way to do it than the grid system, unless you could set up the projectors. I guess you'd have to do it at night or something on an outside wall, but I've never done anything like that.
Well, grid seems to be working for your beautiful murals. I think that's actually an awesome segue into my next question. And a 10,000 square foot mural, and specifically for you, Emanuel and Yoshi, I'd love to hear about, aging bodies in the arts, and you both specifically undergo like very laborious conditions to create your art. Enormous murals, bronze pouring is dangerous and a lot of work, a lot of physical work. And what are the differences that you all see in when you started making art decades ago, as far as the physical act of creating your art versus now, and the physical demand of art making? Oh, Yoshi, you're muted.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me add, because I wasn't not able to comment on that previous question, and so I just go slow. I mean, short. But Ali, I have no interest putting myself into the framework of traditionalist or non-traditionalist, and that's not my interest at all. I'm interested in the idea of producing somewhat genuine, what is real to me. And so the methodology, the method I use or what other people use, that's not my business, and that's not, that doesn't come to the much of the final result. And we talk about body, mind, and spirit for life. The balance of it. I apply that to art as well. And body, it means some material or it can be digital, whatever. And mine is something that we think about, this art, the concept, and the spirit is something that excites everything, ignites everything, and inspire everything. And those three things has to be in each artwork to be real, to be genuine, to be variable in any society, in any time. And so that's my interest. So to me, that's this idea of traditionalist, whatever this, I don't think that's very a useful approach to think about what is art. Anyway, to your question, the physical thing, yes, naturally, of course. As I age, I notice I'm becoming weaker, but I also noticed that the fact that when I was young, I had to go through many tests and experimentations to reach to some agreeable conclusions. But now I became far more economical, not to waste time and materials in order to get what I want. That compensates the decline of my physical strength. Do you see my point?
Yes, absolutely.
I have, for the last 7 years, paid the consequence of having a scoliotic back. And I was always a standing painter. And I love it. Now I can't stand. So I have to sit, I have this chair and everything. It's the biggest pain in the neck not to be able to just stand and paint. Now I've got this chair that keeps rotating around and, I got to find some place to anchor myself. I mean, it's just, aging is, it ain't for sissies, as Betty Davis said. Yeah, so it definitely affects the process. Everything becomes more laborious, or a little more irritating to accomplish, and you have to put so much more effort than you used to. I used to be able to do anything, walk anywhere, run. Now I can't even take a walk. And so, I mean, these are the accommodations you have to make. But on the other hand, the price is too enormous not to do art. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my motto was always art saves lives. It certainly changed mine and saved it.
We always carry some the issues or some sense of frustration. When I was young, I was frustrated with being ignored, and now become a part of the major art scene, whatever. And now I have a frustration with physical issue, but less with this acceptance in artwork, and those issues start to be less of the value. And somehow in these days, like if you ignore me, that's fine. And so there's always change. In terms of frustration, there's transformation. Something is happening for sure.
Being an artist is frustrating in all capacities.
I refuse to age.
It's always, people think you're kind of nuts.
You're doing real well.
Tell us more about that age refusal. I love it.
Oh, well, I watched my husband slowly deteriorate, and it was very sad because he didn't want to take care of himself. And he's brilliant. He's a wonderful artist, but he didn't want to eat right. He didn't want to exercise. And so he died of a heart attack. Again, I mean, he already went through 2-3 heart attacks, and the last one killed him. So after that, and kind of before that, I'm eating correctly. I go up and down the stairs. I'm up to 20, now. So I'm just going to keep working on that. And I don't want to go the way he did, at least not anytime soon. So that's where I'm at with my physical body. And I seem to have more energy than ever. So that's good. And that's all I want to say about that subject.
Thank you.
Well, I'm I'm still very active, and I've been very fortunate health-wise. I don't have any health issues. I'm 74 years old, and I've done a lot of work over the years, and thank goodness most of my murals are community murals, and which means essentially that I design the mural and mix the colors, and I have unskilled volunteer people that help me, and sometimes I'll hire an artist assistant. So the bulk of the work that I have managed to get done in murals have been with the help of young people, a lot of energy. But I still get on scaffolds if I have to. I do a lot more on the powered ones, but back in the day we did just regular scaffolds. But I've been very fortunate health wise, and I continue to work. Doing paintings, mural commissions, and as far as my bronze sculptures are concerned, I do the original clay works, and I do the mold and the wax work, and then I take it to a foundry because I let them do all that work because I'm not interested in doing that. I've learned in the foundries how to do metal chasing and some welding, but I'm just not into that anymore. It's like it just involves too much work, physical work. And so I essentially on some of my large scale sculptures, especially the more contemporary ones, made out of steel. I don't even do those. I just have them done. I'll do the maquette, the small scale piece, but they're usually around 18 or 20 inches high, and then if I get the commission, I'll have an engineer figure out how to make it 35 feet high. That's the largest one I've done in Denver. So I don't do all that work. I just do the small scale thing, and then let somebody else do all the work. Of course, they make all the money too, most of the money, because they did fabrication. But I'm just not. When it comes to steel, especially some of these big pieces are half-inch thick steel, and I just don't mess with any of that stuff. I'll be glad to do a small maquette, but that's as far as I go with that. But as far as the murals are concerned, I still do the grid system. And I don't have to hire engineers to help me with that. I do my own little engineering on that, but I think that's true of a lot of contemporary artists. I don't think they do most of the work on their piece. They usually have to have somebody fabricate it for them. I have no intentions of retiring, and I'm just going to keep working away until I can't do it anymore. That's all I can say.
If I cannot do my work physically by myself, I would stop. And that's probably the timing for me to go on to a different period or phase of my life. But anyway, do you remember the Matisse was laying down on the bed when he was sick or whatever, and he was using this long stick and doing drawing on the wall or paper, whatever. Do you remember that picture? I thought that was very inspiring. You remember that? I thought that was very inspiring because the long stick with the pencil or whatever attached to it was a huge challenge, I bet, for Matisse. And I remember seeing all these instructors at art colleges or schools. They ask students to use this long stick to draw something, And that's a difficult challenge because it's very different from, just approaching to the a paper or a canvas with your hand, and immediately you can move, but stick, it's very difficult. And
Yeah,
so
well,
I thought that was very interesting image.
I know. No, I was just going to point out that I don't know if I invented this or not, but since I've been doing large scale murals, I like to go fishing, and one day my fishing pole broke, and I was about to throw it away, and there's about 5 foot of it left, and the little hole where it broke is about the same size as a piece of charcoal, and I just stick charcoal. I still working with that fishing pole more than 30 years now, and I definitely don't get up to the wall and draw on the wall. I always am standing at 4 or 5 feet away when I'm drawing a mural, So I see where, like Matisse, I've seen that picture, and he did actually quite a bit in his older age of some large scale work, but like I said, even in the case of Matisse or Picasso, any of them guys, they would do some smaller works, but they always had, for large scale works, they had somebody, I think, fabricate them or do most of the work, because you just can't physically do that. But I mean, everybody thinks Michelangelo did everything himself, and that's not true. He had apprentices that did a lot of the work for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's a little bit off the subject, but I remember when I was younger in the Bay Area, there was a tremendous interest in intellectual exchange. The talking about art with other artists, young artists, and in order to stimulate your brain, artistic sort of creative brain, and but less interest in collaborations, and because everyone was really sort of interested in individualism. Leave me alone. I have something in my studio. It's my business, not your business. And that was kind of nature of it. But these days, I started to see more and more collaboration and filling the gap between different venues or genres, and asking someone to make your piece is also it's a collaborative effort. Which I totally understand, and I'm sure there are many benefits to it, and that's what I'm seeing. Sorry, I'm just kind of throw the image into this context, but
yeah, thank you. We have just a couple minutes left. We're going to ask just a few more questions, and we want to leave some time at the end for questions for some of our attendees to be able to ask you guys more specific targeted questions. So I would love to hear just a few quick words from each of you about, sort of the root of this discussion being ageism in the arts. If what is your personal perspective on ageism in contemporary arts? And do you feel like the contemporary art scene is treated as sort of like a young person's field, the new hot artist fresh out of school? Do you guys feel like there's prejudice against you as older artists?
So I don't know, in a sense, yes, but I'm still invited to shows. So I think it's interesting because when I'm in a show with a lot of younger contemporary artists, my piece kind of really stands out because it's pretty much old school in comparison. But I found a lot of respect from the younger artists, at least in my community. I don't know about other communities. In my community is the Chicano community. And so I do get a lot of respect from the younger artists. And so did my husband, who was just a little bit older than me. And they call us, the elders, the mentors. So he gets, when he was alive, he got a lot of respect, and I feel the same way. But, I don't venture too far out. to other communities. And that's the way I like it. That's the way I prefer it. I mean, that's what I do. I'm working with Chicano Humanities and Arts Council. So what I like to do is bring in the younger, less experienced artists so that they have the opportunity to start showing so that they can become the next, artists that are out there in the community. And so there's a lot of artists who are at my age group who venture out and they go into other communities and they have their art shows all the time. And Manuel was one of my mentors when I was young and growing up, and he was like one of the first mentors for me, him and Carlota Espinosa. So, I mean, that's what we do. We just teach our young, send it to the next generation, and they send it to the next generation. We pass on the wand, the sword, whatever that is. We just pass it on and work in that way.
I'd just like to say that being involved with the Chicano movement and doing artwork, related to the struggle, I thought it pretty much had to be figurative and not abstract, because you're trying to send a social message to people, instill pride in their culture or here. So I found myself in the very beginning being exclusively representational or traditional, if you want to call it that, because I thought it was necessary. If you're painting a mural like the great Mexican muralists did in Mexico, who essentially did murals that everybody could understand. It's a mural is like a public speech. Later on, there are other muralists that became more abstract, like Tamayo. But my point is that it depends, what your purpose in the mural is all about. If you're trying to relay a message, you can't be too contemporary, too abstract, because no one really understands. I mean, it could be decorative type of mural or something like that, but I have found myself because I felt very strongly of creating images that our people could identify with, and you can't do that too abstractly with non-objective art. I don't think so. However, I enjoy doing abstracts myself. I it's kind of like my fun time when I'm not doing a commission and following a committee's criteria or something like that. That to me, so I'm not prejudiced against it. I'm not anti-abstraction or anything like that, because I find it very therapeutic, fulfilling to throw up a canvas sometime and not have any idea what I'm going to do. I'll pick up, the first color and throw it on there, and that color will suggest another color to me or another form or whatever, and just take me, before you know it, the painting's pretty much dictating to me what to do. It's like the images are coming through me and not from me. And I enjoy that. I enjoy doing that. I'm certainly not I'm more known and have made my living on doing more figurative work and commissions, but if given the opportunity, and I have done some large abstract sculptures, like the one I just told you about, this 35 feet high in Denver, but I don't think, if I could do that commission, and I would enjoy doing something like that, because it's more personal. I mean, it's a more personal expression, but because I'm essentially a muralist, and my mission has been related more to people. I've been essentially a people painter all my life, but I've also tried to educate people, about their history and things that they should be proud of, kind of following the steps of Diego Rivera, Chicados. But anyways, I just thought I'd point that out. I enjoy doing it all. Let me put it that way. And I'm asked all the time, do you like painting more than sculpture? And it's hard to, it's like asking me if you like one daughter more than your other daughter, or whatever. I enjoy doing it all, and I continue to do it as I get older. I think I am getting more into more abstraction type of work, because it's fun to do, and that's what it's all about when you get old. It's just try to have more fun, right?
Right.
Totally.
Well,
Sharon, Yoshi, did you have anything to say about?
oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Yoshi.
I have different answers provided to this particular question. Let's see. I'm coming from Japan. It's a country that really respect elders and those who have experienced. And instantaneously, if someone sees someone has done something for a long time, they think that he or she has some value, some wisdom, and for people to learn from. And but in the United States, it's a different country, and the preference is young, fresh, new energy, and we focus on that, and we give a lot of encouragement to younger generation to come up with something exciting and new and useful, and that's so beyond any like art field. We have this, Americans have this certain mindset to focus on youth, and so in that context, I shouldn't make any complaint if I were kind of discriminated or put aside, and because I have a motto that I don't worry about. I try not to worry about things I cannot control, and so I just simply accept. So these days, if you see me, whatever, I have no, I just don't, I don't care, and it frees me actually to a degree, and but even I cannot control. I have a small desire in RiNo, which is the stability of my studio situation, because I have moved my studio so many times in my life. And as you know, moving is a lot of work. And seeing the RiNo's rapid change of its internal and external purpose has frightened me, quite honestly, in that regard. But again, this is something I cannot control. So I have to go with flow. As Brian Eno once said, we control things, but also we let go. We just kind of go with flow, and that's my attitude now.
Awesome.
I just want to recall the golden times in RiNo for me was, well, several times. One was when we were brand new, when we just did this thing 30 years ago. We were hot stuff in the news. We had newspaper articles, and the Post would be out here and the Rocky Mountain News. Oh, how well, oh, how wonderful, pattern for life, all that kind of stuff. That was sweet when we were trying to build interest in art in this neighborhood. We were trying to say, yeah, look at the artists who live at Silver Square where I live, etc. Then the next sweet time was when we had 3 art galleries 1 block away. So the synergy between the four of us was fantastic. We would have openings together, etc. So there was a lot of synergy, a lot of all kinds of people, young and old. I find that now, and I used to regularly have shows of 300 and 400 people coming. And since they have all gone, and I am now in the heart of high-rise RiNo with a 12-story thing going up next door. I mean, you can't count the cranes in my neighborhood. And you know, maybe someday the people who eventually live in these high rises might actually come over. But I'm feeling now, after 30 years, like old news. I'm not feeling like new news. Pattern Shop's been here forever. I'm not feeling the same kind of interest in the community to this experience of a live-work environment, etc. So, as Yoshi says, you can't do anything about it. Everybody's always looking for a hot new thing. That's just.
But Sharon, I remember Anton, the fabulous days with socialization, and we want to remember the fact that all kinds of restrictions forced to us by the pandemic,
Absolutely, I went through a malaise.
Implanted some hesitancy for social interactions among us. And I personally am making an effort to revive my old habit of just seeing and chatting with people. And gradually accepting this invitation, an invitation to this Zoom talk is one of the efforts I believe. So I totally appreciate that I became part of it. But we also have to become a little more aware of the recent habit is kind of confining us, and we need to get out, because seeing other people is so inspirational.
Well, part of my problem with getting out is I can't walk. So, you are participating. I finally got a walker, that I have to put, anyway, it's a pain in the neck. It's a pain in the neck to not have the same capacity to do things that I did before. That's aging.
So let's do more Zoom talk.
Well, I'm with an organization that seems to be hot right now because I have so many interviews about, different shows that Chalk is doing. And we are all over the city. And since COVID happened and we had to give up the lease to our building, there have been so many other organizations who now finally want to connect with the Chicano, Hispanic, Latino, Black community. And so they are inviting us to go to their location. So we as a collective are pretty lucky in that way, that now we are, what people need, what people want. They want our voice, to know more about who we are as people of color. So I feel like, in a sense, we are more relevant than we were when we first started. And that was like many years of struggle to get to that point. I mean, within our community, we know and love each other and treat ourselves as family. But as far as a larger community, we are now more hot. So that's pretty cool.
I would agree with that part of that, because I've been dealing with, actually there's people don't realize it, but there's a lot of systemic realism of racism in the arts. And I was since 1985, after writing to the arts community about like the Colorado Council on the Arts and Humanities, never had a person of color on their board. And so I was one of the first ones, because I griped about it, to be on the board. If you look at all the past commissions that have been commissioned in this state and in this city, the vast majority, and I can't tell you exactly, but I bet it's at least 90%, have all been white artists. And a lot of them have been outside of the Colorado area. And being on the other side of the table as a board member of the Colorado Council on the Arts, I seen it was a big frustration for me. You know, being the only person of color on there, because when you have 11 other people that just vote that are all white, voting on things, and I've sat on a lot of committees over the years for public works of art, which are all essentially white again. That's just the reality that we as people of color have had to deal with for since the beginning, since I've been in the arts. And then, as far as I know, I mean, we founded the Museo de las Americas because of the Denver Art Museum not interested in doing any Latino shows. And it was the frustration for
doing any local
decades.
artist.
And finally, we got here they're doing Malinche now, and Frida
I'm in that
Kahlo.
one.
Yeah.
Well, we have
They're doing
Arvada
some-
Center, we have
You're right.
Denver Botanic Gardens.
You're absolutely right.
Good job.
But we have to realize, and it's still going on. It's not over. There's still a lot of systemic racism in the arts in this town. Yeah, I could
Not only in the arts.
Yeah, it's
Right.
Everywhere.
She said not only in the arts.
Education, it's a business, you name it, it's there. And that's one of the things finally people are starting to realize our value and are wanting to include us. But we in the past have never been considered Chicano artists that are finally getting legitimized as artists. They never really took us seriously as artists. And now, the Smithsonian and a lot of other major museums throughout the country are finally, having exhibitions and all that, and being more inclusive of people of color. And I'm really glad that I could see that before I pass on. I didn't think I'd ever see it, but it's happening.
And it took a lot of work for us to get there, didn't it, Manuel? A lot of work.
we can provide a lot of insight to that.
We're still working on it.
Yeah, I don't know if I like to use this word called systemic racism, because I've observed it's kind of natural consequences of the history in any countries that has some favorism being developed. And I was in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area has huge sort of diverse communities, as you probably know, and no comparison with Denver or Colorado. And I remember, let me see, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and like Asian community was complaining to a University of California system that why our kids having incredible grades in high school or in college, not getting into UC Berkeley or graduate school in UC system, and then it's true it was like that, and so people started really take a look at the details, and yes, maybe many Caucasian were in school, but it's not quite like racism was behind the force, but it's like, when you read what is it, some kind of literature that student brings to application, and if they talk about, say, the experience in YMCA camp or something, and that was very useful for him or her to develop their characters, and the readers, the people who are reading those essays, if they have, say, Caucasian, they can relate to it, and far more easy kind of communicate. Meanwhile, if like Vietnamese girl were talking about boat, the story of boat people, and they don't know how to react to it. So that kind of natural sort of the preference of favoritism was happening, even they are not aware of the racism or something. So they started to notice, okay, we have to put the diverse people for the other end, like the jurors and selectors or so on and so forth. And like you were, Emanuel, you were talking about, there weren't many people in color in the committees or so on and so forth. And that's true. But I don't know if that's systemic, but it's just kind of natural concepts because population, Colorado, its majority is Caucasian and traditionally, and that kind of started to form different organizations, different system, and so on and so forth. But we are the one probably has to pay attention to it and let them notice, maybe it's a good idea to provide diverse eyes to everywhere, anywhere. And so we can get maybe fair results out of it. And that's probably what the politicians and many activists are doing. And I don't know.
I think this is a really interesting topic, and I would love to go on forever about all this because it's just so compelling, and we're so honored to have you all here. But I know that we're about 5 minutes out from closing, and I wanted to give an opportunity to the people that are listening in to be able to ask you all any specific questions before we kind of wrap up with what each and every one of you all are currently working on. So is there anybody that's listening that has any questions for any of these panelists today? Yep. Go ahead, Morgan, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been fascinating, and thank you all for your work. My question is, have you found that the content of your work, maybe the style, has shifted as your perspective on life has shifted? We talk about elders having wisdom. I'm not sure, if that happens or not, but it seems like it has for you all. And I just wondered, have you noticed a shift?
As
in my case, it has shifted to make, I have tried to do artwork that is more inclusive, more universal in relation to all people, as opposed to Chicanismo. But my, I still lean towards the indigenous inspiration or spirit, you might say, and I'm finding myself going more in that direction. But even at that, I mean, yeah, I think we just would like respect as the artist and not who did it. I mean, when people go to the Sistine Chapel, they don't think, even though the ceilings are all white, they're all the persons up there are white. I don't think most people even think of that. They see it as a great piece of artwork. But I mean, the bottom line though is that Michelangelo always remained Italian, and that's what the kind of work he did, and that goes for some of the other great artists. They've expanded and all that in their career, like Picasso's that just obviously done so many different types of art, but people we do have some of value that I think should be appreciated by people and celebrated, and we're people are just taking now a second look at what we've been doing for a long time, but we do like every other artist. We grow, or we like to think we grow and change, and it's I think it's all for the good of humanity, as we get older, we realize that, that it's necessary to be more inclusive and and respectful of other arts, right? But go ahead. I don't want to take too much of their time. But.
Do I have time to say anything? I just want to say that, yeah, of course, we've all shifted our perspectives on life because that's what happens when you get older. But I think kind of what's happened is that we have shifted other people's view of who we are. And I think that is pretty important, because I don't know what they thought, Chicano artists were all about, or Hispanic artists, or maybe we were all radical or whatever. But, now they realize that, we have a vast amount of perspectives and styles and way of expressing ourselves. And we're like human, just like everybody else. We might be a little bit more colorful maybe, or, whatever, but I think people see us, for who we really are and not their ordained idea. And I think we shifted the culture in Colorado and, maybe especially in Denver, because we introduced things like events like Cinco de Mayo, which everybody celebrates now, Dia de los Muertos, which all the school kids know about now. And so I think we were pretty influential in the overall culture of Colorado. And we had to go out into the schools to educate. And that's what we did when we were, just letting people know all about our culture until it kind of seeped into everything. So yeah, we as we get older, we change our perspectives, but I am most proud that we have changed the perspective of the Chicano community.
I think that's beautiful, and the cultural identity is a very important thing like that. But I'm personally, I'm more interested in individualism and individual freedom, which artists can exercise the more than other probably people in other field. And the biggest shift I experienced in my life is I became a full-time artist when I moved to Colorado 16 years ago. And it was a risky one, but it paid off to me. And but I still hesitate to recommend and my way to others. But sometimes you may want to take a risk for better and unexpected result. And in one point, I made a change, yes, but not in terms of going with new trend in art world or changes happening in the society, but in terms of meeting the goal in my life. And I try to put myself in alignment to that idea. And the continuous curiosity toward things outside of myself that I describe as an awareness of others. And here others not only imply for people, but also other things, say bronze for one example, say things in natural world, like trees. And yes, trees exist outside of my physical body, physically, but as well as, conceptual agitations for art. So such independent thinking of mine may feed who I am as an artist, I think.
Sharon, you want to wrap it up? Let us know
Well,
what you think.
I wrap it up simply. I'm scaling up. I'm making bigger work.
Good for you.
Yay.
Thick.
Big work, just like Matisse on the wall.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation today. It was truly an honor to talk to every single one of you. I don't know if there's anything specific that you all are working on or that you want anybody to pay attention to any current projects, but I don't know if you want to talk about it now or give a quick plug before we just wrap up.
Yeah, so Chicano Humanities and Arts Council has shows coming up. There's one happening in North Glen. We're taking down a show, putting up a photography show at what's it called? Parsons Theater in North Glen. We have another show going up in Brighton, and that's a Santos show. Check out our website, www.chalkgallery.web. I have a show, Mala Nolly on the Rocks. I have a piece in there. My husband we're taking down the show in North Glen that he just had, or it's still there. But we're putting up the show that we have for him, Stephen Lucero, opens in Meow Wolf, next to the room that he did. And that is kind of officially opened as of 2 days ago, but his opening is on the 25th of March. We have a heart show coming up. So check out the website, and we have a whole lot of shows all over the place. We just got a new home, 40 West, and so we are really cooking.
Well, I already pointed out that I've been in a show in the Denver Art Museum, Marlene Chin. I would urge you all to go see that. It's a significant part of our art history with this show, and then the other one I would just say is the one in Boulder. Viva Voces, which has to do with also our Chicano history in Colorado that they're putting on, and that's going to be up for about a year. So it'll be around at the Boulder Museum if you're ever in that area. And that's about it, other than the show I'm having in Fort Worth, Texas right now.
That's great. Sharon, Yoshi, you got any upcoming stuff?
I think I said too much.
Not a thing. I'm still in COVID malaise.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting
Yes.
us to this.
And I saw your piece, Manuel. It's really cool.
What, Pete? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at the art museum. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
It's an
all
old
so
piece,
much.
1980 old piece, but yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all. Really appreciate it. And Allie, did you want to just say some key words to wrap everything up real quick?
Thank you all so much, our panelists. That was such great insight, and thank you to our moderators, Alex and Ari. That was just a great conversation. We will be sending the recording out to all attendees after the panel's over. We have another workshop coming up in April about greening your practice that will also be virtual. That'll be on April 28th, so look out for more information on that. And then in May, we're going back live in person. We're going to do a branding and website development workshop with Art Boss on May 24th. So stay tuned, and thank you all again. And we'll see everyone soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I have a question. Is it a temporary link, or is this permanent, or how does that work?
It will go on YouTube. Yes, CBCA will post it to their YouTube, as well as Transforming Creatives YouTube as well. So
Okay.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.